I'm just going to tell a little story about how we got to Kansas, why we came here, what opportunities we had, and do those opportunities still exist for other people? Spoiler alert, I think they do. I really think they do. Welcome back to the kitchen. If you're new around here, my name is Jill, and around here, we're just creating a life that we love. We're doing it on a budget. We're doing it with lots of creativity and not trying to keep up with any Joneses. We are not about aesthetics. We're about function and finance and getting stuff done without going broke and enjoying it while we do it and finding the joy in it. So today I'm just gonna put like a roast in the crock pot. And I figure most people know how to do that, but as I do that, I'm just gonna tell a little story about how we got to Kansas, why we came here, what opportunities we had, and do those opportunities still exist for other people? Spoiler alert, I think they do. I really think they do. They're not easy to find, but they are findable. And I just got my real estate license. Not that it helps you at all because I'm only working in my little area right here, but I learned some things while taking the course about different financing options that are out there, about different incentives that people will pay you to move to rural areas. Did you know that? There's all sorts of things. And then I don't know if we'll get to it in this video, but I do want to talk about a little bit of things about what we had to adapt to and some like pros and cons and stuff of living in the country. Since I moved out of the house, basically, I've lived a lot of the time near or in a city. Here, we are nowhere near a city. We're nowhere near a town. We live pretty much out in the middle of nowhere, and we've learned to adapt to that. So anyway, I'm going to start on my roast, and then I'll share with you how we bought our house, what opportunities I think are still there, and some things we had to adapt to that I think you can also adapt to if this is the life you're looking for. And what we do here is we homestead. We have a couple sheep, we have a cow, we have some chickens, we have our little property that we have. We have 9 acres and a home and also an underground house that will be remodeled one day. And what better house to live in Kansas when everybody's all afraid of tornadoes than to live in a house that is 90% under the ground. Pretty fantastic. Anyway, I'll tell you about how much we have invested in this place and how I think that you can do it too. So today we are just gonna make this roast. It's about 3.5 pounds and it is a pretty straightforward recipe. We're just gonna put the roast in, some potatoes, carrots, some seasoning, some onions. Also, I'm gonna put in a little bit of broth, but I don't keep canned, boxed, jarred broth ever. I mean, I should probably be making some more homemade broth, but because I don't have a good way to store it, I just don't. So what I've always done is I've just done bouillon cubes or powders, you know what I mean? Either cubes or loose. This is the beef one. I also keep better than bouillon in my fridge, which is more of like a paste. That way I can only make what I need when I need to use it, and I don't waste that much food. And the thing about when I buy a can of it, I never use the whole can. For the one thing, I usually like a half a can or a box. I never use the whole box. Then it ends up going bad in the fridge because once you open it, it can only be open for so long. So that's why I do this. And then I just add a cup of water to about a teaspoon of broth, depending on what it is. And then I add just whatever I want, and I'm not wasting. So today I'm going to be adding in some carrots, onions, and potatoes to the roast. And there's several different ways that I keep that produce here. I usually buy them in bags, or I put them in bags. I freeze them myself. I'm getting ready to put out my freezer prep video. Or I can buy them in cans of mixed vegetables. And of course, I just add them at different times, depending on how long they need to cook, if they're already pre-cooked or whatever. But today I happen to have everything that I need and just the nick of time to be able to use it up. So let me answer some questions about what place we have here. So we moved here after nearly 50 years in Idaho to Kansas. We found this property because we were on our way back from a vacation in our motorhome and decided that we would stop and visit my husband's family, his great aunt and great uncle that lived in the area, and that we wanted to just stop by. I'd never met them and he hadn't seen them in years. So we stopped by to say hi. And while we were visiting, his great uncle John mentioned, hey, I do have some land that I was going to sell to somebody. If that deal goes through, maybe you guys want to move out here. It'd be kind of fun to have family near. So we're like, okay. Well, the deal fell through. We were able to buy it. We ended up buying 8 acres with an underground house on it. And that underground house, as you might imagine when I say that, is underground. It is like 90% underground. It is built of concrete and it is about 2,000 square foot. And it has an atrium in the middle that allows sunlight down to it. And it's pretty fantastic. However, it hasn't been lived in a long time. It's been neglected and it's had some failures in the roof. So there's a lot of repairs to be done. But someday you might see me in there remodeling it and living in it, or one of our children living in it. Pretty exciting stuff. So we ended up making the deal with him. We bought 8 acres and the underground house but we weren't ready to move to Kansas yet because we still owned a concrete business in Idaho. We still had kids in high school. We still had some stuff to wrap up. So we just kind of made like a 3-year goal. Well, in 3 years, all of our kids will be graduated. We will work really hard to be able to get financially independent enough to be able to move. How are we able to buy this property? Well, we were able to buy it because we had paid off our house. And so we took out a home equity line of credit in order to purchase the property that we have here in Kansas. And so our goal was to work really hard to pay that off in the 3 years. Here we are, we bought that land. And then as we were working towards it, we'd come out here and we'd visit and we'd buy a few rental homes as well across the border in Nebraska, thinking if we're going to transition from our business in Idaho, closing that down, we better get something going here. Rental business in Nebraska, southern Nebraska, not in the big cities, is not really a big moneymaker, FYI. But the houses were cheap enough, and so we thought we would give it a go. So we'd come out here and we'd visit and we'd hang out and we'd work on things and we'd clean things up and we'd set up our rentals and all that kind of stuff. We'd spend a lot of time here. About a year later or so, we got a phone call from that family member, the great aunt, and she said, hey, you know, that house that's right on the corner, right next to your property, the guy is moving out. Maybe you should call his grandma that I think owns the place and see if she'd like to sell it. So we did that. We jumped right on that. We were able to get this place bought sight unseen, this house that connected to our 8 acres. And this gave us almost an acre in addition to what we already had. So now we have almost 9 acres plus the house we live in and the underground house that's going to be remodeled and a lot of outbuildings that are just kind of been sitting for many years there. We finally were able to get out here. We would spend a month or 2 at a time fixing this house up. This house we live in right now was not exactly totally livable. I mean, the guy lived in it, but he said he pretty much just stayed to the front of it and didn't really mess with a lot of different stuff. The first thing we had to do was we had to tackle the walls. The walls had water damage on them where there was many layers of wallpaper that was peeling down, literally just falling down off the walls because the roof had damage. They had replaced the roof and put a metal roof on. Thank the Lord, because that was a huge saving grace. It prevented a lot more damage from happening. So we peeled up all that wallpaper in all the rooms and we pulled up all the carpet, and a lot of it was just like labor. And so I think we put a total of maybe $5,000 into this house to get it livable. And the things that we did was we pulled up all the floor. We realized that we could not refinish the original hardwood floors because walls had been moved. And so where those walls used to be, there was gaps in the hardwood. And for us to be able to just get it done quickly, we just laid down vinyl flooring. And then did a lot of painting and cleaning and scrubbing and updating different things like adding a microwave and just cleaning things out, cleaning up the HVAC and things like that. Then I painted these cupboards, this green color as well, because they used to be brown and they had holes in it because they are not the original cupboards at all. This kitchen is not even the original layout. These cupboards came from somebody else's house and the hardware had been flipped, like the doors opened the opposite way. And so when they got put in here, they just flipped them, but they never filled the holes. And so anyway, there was a lot of stuff that had to be done, but it was all basically labor. I just used that all-in-one paint. Was it Heritage? Fantastic paint for cupboards. I love it. And it worked awesome. Now we have a livable house and 9 acres. And we are all in under $100,000 on this whole property. That being said, you say, well, yeah, but that was in 2020 and 2021. Those opportunities are not available anymore. I think they could be. Are you going to find them on the MLS? No. Are you going to find them on Facebook Marketplace? Maybe. But I think that if you're really wanting this, if you start exploring small towns and communities and look at these other things that I'm going to give you links to, I'm going to give you websites to go search, you're going to find that there are a lot of rural communities in especially the Midwest, but all over the country, that are looking for people to come live there. They'll actually pay you to move to some of these places. In incentives for tax, no state tax for a year or so, incentives to pay the cash that you need to actually do the move, the physical move yourself, incentives for college, pay down your student loans, memberships to local community organizations, all sorts of stuff. Land, free land, discounts, or some sort of like a cash out thing if you build a new house. Now these have to be your houses that you live in though. You can't buy this as a second home and still stay wherever you're at and then just come here and vacation, because you have to be a resident. That's the whole idea, is they're trying to grow the populations of this area and grow the economy and grow everything. And so if you want to contribute to a small economy, a small community, then this is the perfect way to do it, and do it on a budget. There's some tips that I've come up with that I think that if you can find a community that you vibe with, that you really love, find something that's affordable and it has the amenities that you want. For the most part, you're not going to have the choices that you dream of. You know, you're not going to have 5 choices of different dentists to go to. You're probably going to have 1 unless you drive an hour, and then you'll have 2 more. But I think that if you find yourself a community that is within an hour or two from an airport, and say you keep a remote job, you'll have remote job money. Your living expenses will be much less than if you're living in a city somewhere. You can still afford, I think for the most part, depending on how you live your life, to fly home frequently and visit family. I think it's totally doable. A big part of being able to live this life is to be able to be financially responsible and to be disciplined with your money. But if those things are important to you, to be able to get out and go back, then find yourself a small community that's within a few hours of an airport and fly back. It's fine. Like, we have 2 hours to a small airport. It only has United flights, which is fine. So we got a United card. We build up our points. And my husband, he'll fly out tomorrow to go to Idaho. So he'll drive the 2 hours there. He has to arrive like 45 minutes early for the boarding time. He goes through a TSA, him and the, no more than 50 people, because there's only one gate, and that's it. Get on that plane, fly to Denver, shoot out to anywhere you want. So now I've told you about our property. I've told you that I think there are many opportunities out there. There's ways to work around it where you don't feel as isolated, because I know that that's a thing that a lot of people are like, oh, I can never live out there in the middle of nowhere. I just feel really lonely and isolated. Well, you find a workaround. You adapt. Here's the thing about some of these rural communities is that a lot of times you're going to find that families are raised up, and then the kids grow up, they graduate high school, and they go off to college. Once they go off to college, they don't always come home right away. And then mom and dad maybe get sick, pass away, and those kids have established their lives in Pennsylvania, Arizona, wherever, and mom and dad's farm is up for sale, or their house is up for sale. Well, maybe a farmer comes in and says, well, I want the land, but I don't necessarily need the house. I have a house. So then they buy up that. Well, they don't care about the house itself. The house can sell for cheap because it's the farmland they want. And the kids are like, well, we could pay the taxes because it's hardly nothing every year, but the house is just going to fall apart, and it seems kind of silly. So if you can go, and you can go through the assessor's office, you can go through tax logs, there's all sorts of different ways. We actually found a house. We drove past one. We were like, that looks like nobody lives in it. Let's find out who owned it. We just went right to the website, tax logs, found out the address. We wrote a letter and said, hey, we're interested in buying this property. It doesn't look like anybody's living there. Is there, a family or an estate that maybe owns this, that we could buy it? We had it bought within a month. It was a great deal. There's ways of doing it. Do you need to visit these places? I would recommend it. I wouldn't recommend ever buying a property sight unseen without an inspection. We've done that multiple times, and I will never do it again. Not that we've been terribly burned, but we did get burned. We bought a house in Kentucky, and turns out that there had been a house fire, and the rafters, the roof had been burned, and they just patched them back in and put a new roof on. And so when we got there to actually buy the house and start remodeling the house to be a rental, we went up into the attic and realized everything was burned. Now, it was burnt old wood, old lumber, which is bigger than today's lumber, but it was terrible. And it was something that wasn't disclosed, and it was awful. And an inspection would have revealed all of that. Also, there was a problem with the foundation. So I don't recommend doing it like that. I do recommend getting your boots on the ground, getting out to these communities and finding a place that you vibe with, because all these communities are different. And you think when you move here, you move to these smaller communities, everybody's just going to be salt of the earth, and there's not going to be any trouble or any issues, or, no poverty or drugs or homelessness or anything like that. Well, there's a little bit of everything that's in the city you're going to find out here in these communities. The difference is just the density. You're not going to have as much of it. Now, have I seen a homeless person in my community? Not necessarily, but there's probably people that qualify as homeless living with family members or living with friends. And when you do meet somebody that is struggling with an addiction, you're going to know them personally or know somebody who knows them personally. So it's a little bit different. So you really want to make sure that you vibe with your community. Anyway, let's continue on with my cooking, because I've started talking with my hands and I've stopped cooking. Onto the onions. I'm going to be adding all these carrot peels and onions into my broth bag. By the way, if you haven't watched my other videos about that in particular process of me salvaging stuff so that I can make a bone broth later. Don't forget to do that on your own stuff. Just keep a Ziploc bag in your freezer, and you just add to it until you're full of that and full of some sort of bones from something that you can make a bone broth out of, or just a vegetable broth. My ADHD has me kind of jumping around a little bit, so I certainly hope you're able to follow. But if you're not, please add a comment, subscribe to the channel too, because this is good stuff, and I'm going to share some more about it. And you might want to know about it when it comes out. So subscribe to the channel, like, comment, do all that kind of stuff. But seriously though, if I'm leaving you behind because I kind of skip around, I'm just really passionate about this, and I'm excited about so many opportunities, because I know there's a lot of people out there that want to live a simpler life, and they don't know quite where to jump off. How do you start the process? We've lived in one spot forever and ever and ever, and maybe we're afraid to move away from our friends or our family. Maybe we just don't know where to move to. I talk about how I live in Kansas, but Kansas is not the only opportunity. There's a lot of people that are like, oh, I'd never live in Kansas. Well, you know what? visit the states if you haven't yet, because I tell you, there are hidden gems everywhere. Southern Kansas, totally different than northern Kansas. Northern Kansas has rolling hills and trees, and it's gorgeous, I think. And I'm from Idaho, which is phenomenally gorgeous. Visit these places. But some states that I would suggest looking at are Kansas, Nebraska, the Dakotas, Missouri, Arkansas, Iowa, Ohio, Indiana, parts of Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Kentucky, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, parts of Texas. You know, there's parts of Texas that'll still give you an incentive. They'll pay you to move there. Oklahoma is another good one. There are all sorts of things. I moved from Idaho. We don't have any natural disasters really to speak of. We have wildfires, but if you live in town, you don't really have to worry about it. We don't have tornadoes, tsunamis, hurricanes. We don't even really have that bad of hailstorms. So our car insurance is fairly reasonable because we don't have hail damage claims. Our homeowner's insurance, very inexpensive because we just don't have natural disasters. So that's always like a big plus. However, when you move to some of these other states, that may be more or less for where you lived at. Here, homeowners and auto insurance costs more from Idaho. But if you've lived in Louisiana or Georgia or Florida, it may be cheaper up here, or in Missouri or in Kentucky. I don't know. So everybody's going to have their own unique take on all that. Those are all fantastic places, and I'm going to give you a website to go to in order to look into those incentives I was talking about. Also, did you know that there's special financing for people that are wanting to live in rural areas? And did you know that there's an office called the FSA office? It's the Farm Service Association or something like that. They're in every single small town around here. I've never even heard about it in Idaho. And Idaho's a farm state. We have a lot of farming. And we're known as the potato state. But I've never heard of the FSA office because it just wasn't part of my circle, right? There's a USDA loan that is for rural development, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the rural opportunity zones. All these things you can go Google. Rural opportunity zones obviously are rural. You're not going to have these opportunities in cities, but you can be a couple hours or an hour outside of the city and have these opportunities to be able to purchase property, houses, or land, or both, in places that they're wanting people to move to. And these USDA loans, if qualified, you can qualify with a slightly lower credit score, qualify for a zero down. You can qualify with competitive interest rates, not necessarily lower, but competitive interest rates. No PMI insurance. Look into it. USDA loans for rural opportunity zones. So here's the kind of the method that I'm looking at. I'm thinking that kind of makes sense in my brain. It may not make sense to you. Maybe you want to do it your own way, but look into those loans. If you need a loan, if you don't have the cash to buy these properties, look into the loan opportunities. See if that's something that maybe you think you might qualify for. And then go to the rural opportunity zones and start getting an idea. Look, and there's a map out there, rural opportunity zones. It's a government map, and it'll show you where those are in the different states. Find some areas, if you want to be close to water, then find something that's close to a lake, find something that's close to rivers, something that's close to an airport, close to a big major city, but not obviously in it. There's all these different things that you can look at by looking at this rural opportunity zone map and kind of narrow it down to some places. Like, do you want to live in the mountains? Do you want to live in the plains? Do you want to live in the Ozarks? Gorgeous Ozarks, by the way. So kind of pick out some spots and then just start drilling down and researching the different places. And then you're going to go to makemymove.com. Makemymove.com is a website that, depending on what program, it's city, county, or state is what it appears to be, they give you incentives to move to these areas. So, for example, I have some on my computer, but off the top of my head, Texarkana, Texas, Arkansas is right on the border. They'll pay you with free first college classes. They have a Texas A&M Texarkana, and then there's another college that's there. You get memberships to their different symphonies, or tickets to the symphony and memberships to their community events. I think there was one that I don't remember if it was that town or not, but it was one of the towns, maybe it was a town in Kansas, that when you do the Make My Move incentive, that you can they'll give you a loop around in a race car on their local track. So, but Kansas offers tax credits through 2026. So you don't have to pay any state tax, not federal tax, but state tax. There's some student loan repayment. There's cash to actually do the move yourself, $5,000 to $8,000. If you are, say, a police officer, a nurse, or a teacher, there's incentives out there that are just flat, straightforward. Like if you move to, and these are not rural areas, these are cities, but this is all part of Make My Move. It's not just limited to rural areas. It's got a broader spectrum. But say you want to move to Washington, D.C. and you're a cop, there's $20,000 incentive that you can qualify for, they'll pay you 20 grand just to come there and become a cop. Or if you move to a certain area and you bring with you, you're a remote worker and you bring with you a teacher or a healthcare worker, and that person works in the local economy, then you get an extra bonus for that. Like, there's so many different things, and you sort it out by state, by region, and then you drill down to the towns and the counties. County right here has where they'll give you free lots to build a brand new house right in town. So there's lots of little incentives out there that I want everybody to know about, because I had no idea that these things existed until I started doing my real estate class and then living here. Moving on to potatoes, red potatoes. Let me share with you some things I've had to adapt to. Getting groceries. We have a long drive to go get groceries where I live. If I want to go to my local small town grocery store, totally fine. I can do that. Still 30 minutes. If I want to go to like a supermarket, it's an hour minimum, unless I go to the big city, and then it's 2 hours. So there's some things that I need to prepare for the way I didn't prepare in Idaho. In Idaho, if I want to go to the grocery store, I just jumped in the car, went to the store, got my stuff, came home, put it away. Well, here I pack coolers. I load up and keep readily available on my back porch large coolers, and in my freezer I keep those little blue reusable ice packs. And so whenever I head to town, I just load those up, head in, and do all of my errands. I try to be a little bit more methodical about making sure that whatever I need to get in the town, that I know what it all is, and I keep track of it so that when I go to town I can get it all done and I don't forget something. And then the last thing, of course, I do is I grab my groceries and I head home. Getting groceries is not the same. Do I buy more raw ingredients now? Yeah, I do, because it's just easier when you run out of this or that. If you have it to make from scratch, then you don't feel like you have to just run off to the store, because running off to the store is not an easy thing to do. That's one of the things. I talked about the insurance. Insurance payments are a little bit more. And I don't know if it's different in other places, but in Idaho, when we bought, say, a car or a trailer, we went down to the DMV, we paid the tax on it for what we bought it for, and that's it. And we registered every year. Here in Kansas, I don't think we've paid tax for anything that we've bought. We've only transferred things. We haven't bought anything here. We pay a personal property tax every year. So like you would on a homeowner, your property insurance, you get another personal property insurance bill. So I just paid like $30 for one of our enclosed trailers for this year's taxes on it. Maybe that's more common in other states. It was not in Idaho. So that's something I get used to. I'm adapting to. Also, there's a lot of dirt roads here. The snow, when it blows here, it can shut down the roads for days. We can be snowed in, which is fine with me, because as long as I prepared, I'm good to go. And the community here seems to be really good. Last year when we all got snowed in, I ran out of hamburger and my neighbor ran out of milk. So I gave her milk, she gave me hamburger, and it worked out just lovely. But there's many things that I've had to adapt to. So obviously it's much slower here. When the northern lights are able to be seen, we can actually see them, because you can see all the stars. There's no light pollution where I'm at. Of course, now you can live in a small town too, and not just in the middle of nowhere like I do. Homeschool in Kansas is pretty easy. Idaho, it was amazing. Here, I just have to do a couple extra steps, which is hardly nothing. I have to register the name of my school that I'm teaching my kids in. I just made up a name, you send it in, and done. And then they have some recommendations on the hours and the curriculum, but it's not anything that is inhibiting, you know. Also, homesteading here in our county, I've never run into a single problem with homesteading, how we move our buildings around, use our property for different things. I've never had an issue with anybody coming out and saying, nope, that's not permittable or whatever. Now, is that the same everywhere? No, you want to do all of your research. Research the homeschool. Some of these states that you think, oh, they're old school, they're whatever, some of their homeschool laws are stricter than what you would think they would be. So you want to do your research. There's a lower cost of living, of course. These houses, like I'm saying, are, like we just had a Victorian house with 42 acres, I think it was. This house, I don't even know how big it was. 3,000 square feet, Victorian, yellow, gorgeous. It looks like a doll house with lots of acres. It sold for $350,000. And there's another house in town that is another Victorian house. Been around forever. It's gorgeous. It's white. It has a big porch. It's less grand. It's more of like Victorian, had a baby with a farmhouse. It's adorable, with like 3 or 4 acres for under $200,000. And they have fruit trees. This is the stuff that's still available in some of these communities. You just have to give up some amenities. But if this is what you want, it's totally doable. Yeah. Do I want you to come here and be like, I'm sure I can find a job? Nah, probably not. But if you are in construction, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, if you started a business out here, at least where I live, I don't think you'd have to look for work. As long as you were punctual, honest, on time, and you knew what the heck you were doing, I think work would find you every day of your life if you want to start a business in any of those type of things, because the population is aging here. People can't get out and work on these things anymore. Some of the businesses have closed down and there's just not as enough people to get them serviced. And it's a need. It's a need for this community in particular. Entrepreneurial type stuff. If you have remote work, that is perfect. That is fantastic. That's probably your most ideal thing, unless you have a way of bringing in money or you're debt free and you've already worked it all out. But definitely think about your finances, because the jobs here are not plentiful. And if you find them, it's not going to be the same pay you get in the city, right? But again, the housing stuff is a little bit cheaper. If you put your kids in the schools, you're probably going to find that it's a little bit smaller class sizes. I know here in our county, everybody is reduced. We have 3,000 people almost in this whole county. They've closed down every single school in all the small towns. Every single kid in this whole county gets bused to one town, and they all go to the one school, to the elementary school and then the junior high school. And that's just what happens, because it's not economical to run schools in every one of these towns because there's just not enough kids. Do you see what I'm saying about it's kind of rural and they need people. They want people. They don't want these communities to die off. They don't. They want them to be thriving. The air is cleaner here. There's a lot more freedoms. There's good hunting in a lot of these places. You're going to find hunting is good. Here, we have people from Pennsylvania, Texas, all over that come to Kansas just to hunt. The duck commander people, duck dynasty people, they come to Kansas and they go hunting all the time. But if you're into outdoor activities, then research your area. If you're into like UTV riding, then look at the Ozarks. Look at the areas that you're in. Look at Kentucky or whatever it is. Fantastic. The Smoky Mountains. Eastern Kentucky has some Make My Move incentive money, and it's gorgeous. You're in the middle of the Smoky Mountains, right up against West Virginia and all that. You're fairly close to New York, Maryland, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, okay, so then the weather, yeah. You may not love the weather. We do have tornadoes here. However, our house has been here since 1940. I don't know of any house that's been taken out right around here by a tornado. I hope I'm not jinxing myself by saying that, but I haven't seen a tornado. Yeah, there was the big one that went through Lincoln last year. So yeah, there's weather stuff. So insure your place and take precaution and know what you're doing. But once you live here a little while, you get a little more comfortable. And eventually you might even morph into locals, which when there's a tornado siren that goes off, they don't go to their cellars, they go outside and try to find it. So there's that. Less traffic, good and bad. You don't have a lot of traffic, which is fantastic. I love it. But when I break down or if I run out of gas, I would not love it, because you're probably going to have to wait about 30 minutes till somebody comes along to help you out. But the likelihood of that person stopping is probably pretty good. The people are really helpful and very kind around here. You treat them good, they're going to treat you good for the most part. Is it devoid of any of the struggles of the city? No, there's still addiction. There's still poverty. There's still trouble. There's still different things that happen here, that happens in the city. It's just not as dense. You don't hear it every night on the news, or you don't read it in the local paper every day. You get a lot more privacy. Blue collar businesses could thrive out here if that's what you're into. Now, pizza delivery. No, you're probably not going to get pizza delivered. You might if you live in the town. Out here where I live, no. The only time I get a pizza delivered is if I call my kid and say, hey, on your way back home from work, can you bring a pizza from the gas station? The gas station pizza. That's a whole nother thing. Sounds terrible, doesn't it? It's really not. Hunt Brothers, Casey's. If you know, you know. It's not that bad pizza. But it's not going to get delivered to you. There's usually a hospital in every town, but they're not going to be the highest, most advanced machinery in those hospitals. If you go to the hospital and you need something that's a little more, they're going to refer you to Kansas City, Omaha, Dallas, whatever it is, wherever you're living at. So it's not the end of the world. And you're not going to be able to choose from as many doctors as maybe you could in the big city. But I think I get a lot more personal care here. It's a little bit like those Hallmark movies. Those Hallmark movies where there's that doctor and they're moving from New York to California, and they hit a cow in Kansas, and they have to wait to get their car fixed. But at the same time, they find out that the person broke some law, some obscure law. So then now they have to go to work in the county and in the city for 6 months in order to pay off their debt and their fines and do whatever, pay their restitution, whatever it is. Those Hallmark movies, that's what it kind of feels like a little bit. So it's kind of fun. And you fall in love with that. You fall in love with that small town vibe, right? That's what always happens on those Hallmark shows, is the doctor's like, oh my gosh, it's such backwoods. It's so, I can't work here. I can't do this. I'm going to the city. I'm doing plastic surgery. I'm doing this. And then they fall in love with the community, and then of course they fall in love with their mate that lives there. And so then they can never leave because this is where their mate lives and he's a farmer or whatever. So it's kind of what it feels like a little bit. I mean, I don't want to sugarcoat it because it's probably really not like that, but sometimes it does feel like that. Oh, you're going to be very car dependent here. That's definitely something to consider. Very car dependent. If you don't drive, you want to learn right away, and then get a car that serves your needs. So like for me, I drive an SUV, a Volvo, and but it has a hitch. So when I go to town, if I need to pull my little, 8-foot trailer that's enclosed, I can do that. So I can get a big load of stuff. So I'd only have to take one trip to town. There's lots of little things like that. The wages are low. We talked about that. Airports, the taxes are different, the personal property taxes and stuff like that. But I mean, there's lots of things to consider, and there's many things you're going to learn to adapt to, but it's doable. If you want to live more rural, more simply, more whatever, if that's something you're into, I'm telling you, there are resources out there that'll help you finance it, get incentives to pay you to do it, and deals still left for you to be able to buy property that's not going to break the bank. There are still deals around here for under $200,000 with acreage. If you have any type of handy skills at all, you can get a much better deal than that. You may have to dig a little harder to find it. I'm excited for anybody who is seeking this way of life. I mean, I have my washer and dryer in my kitchen, right? That's not ideal, but that's just the way the setup was. Eventually, it'll be out on I call it the back porch, because there's like a back porch and then another room that's called the back porch. I'll have that remodeled and the washer and dryer will be out of here. But for the next couple of years, can I live with that? Yeah. Is it what I had in Idaho? No, I had a laundry room in Idaho. But I didn't have 9 acres in Idaho either. So I'm just saying there's trade-offs, right? There's trade-offs. And our goal is in 10 years, we should have this property and this house set up close to the way that we want it to be. We just do a little bit every year. We don't break the bank. We don't go out and get out loans and stuff to be able to get it all done right away. We just do little bits. We happen to have an old chicken coop that was about to fall over and an old chicken run. And my husband picked up a skid loader for, we paid cash for it, right? So it was from an estate. And we were able to buy that. We used that skid loader. But here's the thing. We didn't need to buy that to do it. Because our neighbor right down the road would have gladly, that's a farmer, would have gladly brought his skid loader over and drug the chicken coop for us. That's the truth. But we happen to have that. We happen to acquire that since we got here. We drug this chicken coop over, we put it closer to our house, and we just stiffened it up, right? We just beefed it up, made it to where it was nice and sturdy because it was falling apart. Another few years, it might have been falling apart. A lot of people would look at it and say, that's a tear down. I looked at it and said, no, it's not. And my husband has the skills to fix it. Is he a carpenter? No. Does it look amazing? No. Does it house our chickens? Yes, it does. And they love it. So there's lots of ways to get around that. Like, we brought our little zero-turn mower that we bought in an estate sale. If you notice, we do a lot of sales, estate sales, clearance sales, auctions, things like that. But anyway, and so that was mowing our little yard. Well, then we're like, we need something to mow like the fields so that we can start managing some of this land and getting it kind of regeneratively, properly cared for, putting animals on it and going through that whole process and just rejuvenating it naturally. So we went to an auction at that Victorian house that I just told you about. The one that looks like a dollhouse with 40-something acres. They had an auction. I bought myself a Ford tractor. It cost less than $2,000 and it's got a big mower thing behind it. It's manual, but it only has like 4 or 5 levers. And I could totally, there's no cab on it. I just sit there in the sun and I just drive that thing around and I mow. It cost me less than $2,000 to buy this tractor. Did I have it in the first year here? No. I bought it in the second year. And it has helped us a great deal be able to manage the land that we're managing. But I'm not going to go out and finance a big old tractor and put myself in debt just to get something to mow my ground. No, I'm going to wait until the opportunities come up. So there's lots of advice to be gotten there, I think. And I know that there's a lot of people on YouTube that are homesteading and they have the big perfect house. They have the brand new house and they're building it with their own hands and they're buying a brand new Kubota and they have all the attachments and they have all the stuff and they have a brand new pickup and brand new this and a brand new that. You don't need any of that stuff. We have 2 4-wheelers that we've got, again, at an auction. I think there's a theme here for sure. We bought at auctions. They're 2-wheel drive. They're not 4-wheel drive. We have a little trailer that we had forever and ever and ever. We never used in Idaho. We brought it out here. We use it. It tows behind the 4-wheeler. The 4-wheeler, I think maybe we spent $1,500 a piece for years ago. And we never used them in Idaho. There's no reason to. We use them every single day here. And then at that same auction at the Victorian house, I bought a dump bed trailer for the 4-wheeler. It cost me, I don't know, $150, $80. I don't remember how much it was. We put that on the other 4-wheeler. We haul our wood in it. We haul our feed in it. We haul stuff from here to there to all over. And again, we're debt free and we're not adding up debt as we live here because we just get things as we need it and as it comes available as an opportunity that we need to invest. And
I don't know. I could go on and on and on, but I love it here. And I really am excited about being here. And I'm really excited about sharing the opportunities with other people to be able to do the same thing. Now, the reason I do YouTube is because I want to share all of this knowledge. That is my number one reason. I want to share all this knowledge. I want to teach people how to be self-reliant, how to cook good meals at home, how to homestead, how to make do. But the biggest thing is I want to teach you how to do it slowly, at a good pace, not stressing yourself out. I want you to do it as debt-free as possible. And I want you to just enjoy it. See the opportunities that are out there. And maybe you don't want to live the same life as me. That's fine. But maybe there's something adjacent to what I'm doing that lines up with what you want. Maybe you want to be in town, in a smaller town, say a town of 10,000. You want to have the McDonald's down the road. You want to have the Tractor Supply right down the street, and you don't want a big old yard to mow, but you don't want to have a $500,000 mortgage. So go find it. It's there. I'm telling you, they're out there. I'm going to go put some seasoning on my roast, get the lid on it, and get it going. If you have any questions, please reach out. I want to answer them all. May God bless you. God has been so good to me this week, and I am so appreciative of that. And I pray He's good to you. Have a great week.